Thank you, Lauren, for the intro, and thank you, Dr. Jeff, again for being here.
Thanks for having me.
We only have about 20 minutes, so would like to get started.
Yeah, let's do it.
Can you first tell us about your role as AT&T's head of health and well-being and what that means?
Sure. So as the lead for health and well-being for AT&T, this is a first new role. That doesn't mean that AT&T has never focused on health and well-being. It's just this is a very concerted effort to, let's call it, formalize and prioritize, formalize AT&T's priority into health and well-being for our employees. And so I joined the company about 7 months ago, as Lauren said, from Comcast, NBC Universal. And so during that time, I've been learning about the business and really understanding what we can do to take the employee experience from health and well-being, take it up a level.
And we have seen a number of companies in the past couple years hire chief medical officers, doctors to lead their health and wellness efforts, especially because of the pandemic with Delta Airlines and Google and other things like that. So what would you say you're focusing on most at AT&T in terms of employees' health and well-being? Yeah,
this is a great question. So if we just talk broadly, and this is even applied to AT&T, so if we think broadly, clearly a lot of us know here in this audience, we have the pillars of wellness. So that's financial, that's career, physical. So think our traditional health plans, things like that. And so the mental and well-being pillar has always been known to us. But that is the thing that when COVID kind of happened, it really kind of uncovered the need for a really dedicated resource, a resource thinking not just operationally, but thinking strategically, what's around the corner, how can we think ahead in terms of what maybe our vendor ecosystem is, what direction we want to go, how we want the interaction to be. And so that trend, so to speak, has really been a long time coming, even before COVID. But COVID really accelerated the need for these chief health type officers.
And what kind of offerings and services do employees have if they do want to get mental health assistance through their employer?
Yes. So I'll speak broadly, and then I'll hone in on kind of the things that we're doing at AT&T. So if we think broadly about the mental health well-being space, I like to think about them as what are products that we're doing, and then what are the policies that we're enacting, especially for those that are thinking about the employee experience. So products, clearly we know we have some really great vendors, obviously, in the exhibit hall there. So thinking about what are the services that we're offering, what employee assistance program that we're offering. And so there's a whole ecosystem clearly related to that. And we think about how it is the interaction between the employee, the level of engagements, things like that. And so we have plenty of those types of offerings at AT&T. We think about collectively our employee assistance, our therapy, our coaching services. Then let's go to this other kind of silo that I think we think about from a human capital point of view, but maybe as an industry we should think a little bit more about. So what are the policies that we put in place? And it could be really basic, such as, do we give people time off to actually care for themselves, whether it's physical, mental, or otherwise? And so I am so proud of AT&T, for example. We have things like caregiver leave, right? That's not sick leave. That's not PTO. That's actually, I have a family member that needs my help. It could be up a generation, down a generation. You have dedicated time to do that. We have those offerings for our management employees. We also are thinking about other things that a lot of employees have, such as parental leave. How do we think about that experience? How do we elongate that to the extent that that's possible? So we've extended things like that. And also taking a look at traditional sick leave. Are we talking about taking sick leave in a way that is not just about the transaction of, I have a cough, I want to, I'm taking time off to go see a doctor? Are we thinking holistically about that? Again, it's a continuum, which will likely be a theme that we'll talk about today.
And to talk about vacation and sick leave and things like that, a lot of the times, and we've talked about this before, employees don't always take advantage of all the services that their employees have to offer, like maxing their 401k benefit or taking all of their paid vacation. Can you talk a little bit more about that and why it is so important for the employee to do so?
Yeah, it's a really great point that you're bringing up, and I'll kind of answer in a couple different ways. And so the first thing I'll say is, when we're looking at our offerings, so not just as an AT&T, but in my previous roles and as an employer thinking about things, we're looking at, are there buckets of benefits that we're missing? And most employers have all the major buckets: 401k for financial health, retirement, health plans, EAP, all those things. So those are done. And then what you do is we look into those buckets now, and then we say, are they being utilized in the way that we intended to be to create the kind of people culture that we want? And so 401k is actually a really interesting phenomenon. Not only at this company, but at my previous ones, and my guess is that a lot of employers here, the 401k, many people have matching. So it's free money, I'll use air quotes, free for the employer, but it's not maximized, meaning people either under-contribute or they don't contribute at all. And so we have to ask ourselves, well, why is that the case? Now, I'm not gonna give you a grand proclamation of why that's the case. We're clearly, if we had solved that, then we would have put a banner out there and told you we solved it. But those are the kind of questions that we have to ask ourselves. And the same thing goes for, let's say, on the behavioral health and mental illness side. We have free services for employee assistance program. And people clearly are struggling, whether it's silently, whether it's externally, and they want help, and they'll get help for free, but people don't use it. And so those are the kinds of things that we're hoping to really dig into, and goes to part of the purpose of having dedicated mental capacity within the large organization to think about these problems, because ultimately they solve business problems.
Mm-hmm. Well, talking specifically about mental health, and there has been a big push to destigmatize it and to encourage everyone to take advantage and focus on their mental health and do things to improve it. But there is obviously still some stigma around it, and that might be why employees might not decide to reach out to their employer to find out everything about that. How are you guys trying to solve that?
Yeah, and I would dare say it's more than some stigma. That stigma is very long-lasting. It is, to the individual that's making a decision, it is not just about, well, should I engage in cure? It's then this whole ancillary discussion internally to their mind about, well, what if my family finds out about it? I'm the bedrock of the family. What about that? I have this reputation at work. What about that? And those create barriers, invisible and artificial barriers, but they create them, and those barriers are really large and quite insurmountable in some instances. And so there is no singular path to solve this, but part of the journey for destigmatization is to talk about it, but to also talk about it in a way that does not create an overemphasis on it. So like, it's almost like if I'm gonna have a conversation, I'm saying, hey, Shelly, I want to preempt you. This is going to be a really serious conversation. You're already building your guard up. But rather, when we talk to employees, it is a normal conversation that does not add an additional layer of severity to the conversation. That is how we start saying, oh, well, we just having a normal conversation. And that repetitive aspect of it helps take down what I'll call the temperature in relation to this topic. And if we do that over time, then it becomes naturally part of the fabric. Again, not to proclaim that we've solved this, but that is kind of one way to do that. And to also realize that, sorry, you may not have asked this, and to also realize that this is a journey for an individual, and that a one-time campaign does not solve it. A series of campaigns does not solve it. It is a steady discussion, so that when people are ready to engage into this journey, that journey is available to them on that path the moment that they're ready, rather than, oh, I heard someone talk about this, I'm actually ready to call someone. It rarely works that way, as we all likely know.
So you think it'll be a long time until people are fully comfortable getting access to those resources?
So yes and no. I think that to start with a conversation at a very senior level indicates that we are open to talking about that. And so when I am on town halls with employees, or I'm one-on-one with employees up and down my organization, and I talk about this topic, I talk about it in a in a casual way, meaning as it's in conversation versus a build-up, as I mentioned before, that already makes people, and particularly people leaders, think about it differently. And then on top of that, we also want to highlight why is it beneficial to think about it. And it's not just why is it beneficial for you as an individual or for the family. That's perfectly fine. I like to talk about it in terms of you don't have to have anything wrong with you to engage into our system, because when you are, if someone came to you, Shelly, and said, hey, Shelly, you have stuff wrong with you, and therefore I want you to engage into our employee assistance program. I'm already creating this extra barrier on top of a barrier that's already there. And then now you're kind of really focused on all the negative pieces of it. Versus, let's say, a different aspect of this conversation, which is, hey, Shelly, you've been performing wonderfully. Your future at this company is unlimited. And I think that you can get there faster if we got you a coach on a couple of things. I noticed that you're nervous during these items. I can't solve that nervousness for you, but we should explore that and figure out ways to help curate that energy into something more productive. And coaching now is a spectrum within therapy that we can engage someone. So now we've taken something from I have something wrong with me, therefore I need to engage into the system, to I want to actually get better, not making a proclamation or accusation about someone's starting level. I think that changes the conversation. But again, it's an individual by individual journey. Some people are ready for it and some people are not. But once we get momentum, that's when we'll really start an inflection point.
But from an employer standpoint, why would an employer want to offer all these services? How much would it impact the brand of the company?
So let me start off with the practical pieces. So the practical pieces is regardless of the talent market that's there, there's always ultra competition for the top talent. It could be tough economic times or booming economic times. There are always competition for the most talented of individuals. And so to stay competitive, you have to have a wide array of offerings, just like many of us do right now. So that's the easy stuff. The fundamental business reason is if you are suffering physically, mentally, or any other things that you're thinking about, an elderly parent, a sick child, anything like that, the time that you're spending working now gets crowded out by the stuff that's in your mind as a caregiver, as a breadwinner for the family, all these things like that. And then this leads into, if it's significant enough, you don't go to work, absenteeism. You're just subclinical, you go to work, but you're not totally focused, right? Who's been there? You don't have to raise hands. Who's been there? That's presenteeism. And so these combination of all these things lead that if people are thinking about other stuff, they can't think about the stuff that we are paying them to do. So it's simple economics from that point of view, not to be reductive, but that's really how we think about it. So if we can have really comprehensive offerings for all different types of individuals, celebrating the diversity and how they want to engage into the healthcare system, the well-being system, and we add on top of that, we lower the bar for entry with our policies, with the way we talk about it, with our expectations of how we want people to engage into the system, then we can create, I think, a much more inclusive environment that isn't about, well, let's hold hands and be a circle. Like, that's actually transactional in some sense, that actually gets people into the pipeline, and it is a normal part of our culture to engage into our systems of well-being, and that's what we want to create.
It's not just because they have to compete with talent, but also they want to increase productivity and make it a better company.
It is a win-win situation. We're offering competitive benefits, because it always goes higher and higher in benefits, right? And then we're offering an environment that can allow people to use the benefit and really thrive, right? So how many individuals do we work with, and maybe we're part of that group too, where we're working at 70 or 80% because that's all that's asked of us. Well, how great would it be that we work in an environment that we're always being asked of all of us, because we can give all of us all the time. That's the kind of work environment I'd rather work in.
Right, me too.
Yeah.
So talking more about productivity, and we have seen the emergence of what's so-called the sandwich generation, where employees now not only have to take care of their kids, but also their aging parents. And so that's going to take time out of their day where they can work, and it might also take a lot of mental drain as well. So how do you see employers being able to help their employees who do have to do both of these?
Yeah, so then let's use the framework that I highlighted earlier. Let's talk about it from our products and benefits point of view, and let's talk from a policies point of view. So from a product and benefits point of view, we traditionally think about our employee services for caregiving children, right? As many of you know, I can't quite see, but many of you are probably in the same age bracket as me. And if you're also fortunate enough to have parents who are still here, maybe they're aging a little bit, and then you may or may not have children. So we're getting sandwiched now by both, and they both need us. And as an Asian American, that is definitely on top of my mind as an Asian American. Caring for my parents is an expectation culturally. It's an expectation financially. So it's an expectation that I have to then think about. And so we have this sandwich mechanism between. And so if I'm thinking from a product's point of view, I'm offering things for children and caregivers from that perspective. We're looking down the generation, but we're looking up. What I'm really proud of at AT&T is we have services that not look down in a generation, but we look up in the family tree. How can we offer services that's either last minute caregiving, think of a sitter, right, for an elderly person at a center, or someone more likely comes to your house, right? That's different than I'm getting a nurse care person. Those are two different things, right? One's a health plan mechanism, one is we're offering to employees. And so there are plenty of those things. I do think, as an asterisk side note, I think that ecosystem will continue to develop quite rapidly as we continue on. If we think about the services that an employee needs to care for both generations that they're sandwiched in between. And then we think about from the policy point of view, you can offer something, but if you don't give the employee space to engage the system, what was the point of you offering it? It was superficial then, right? And most of us are not in the journey of being superficial. We want to make real impact in our employees and our families, because then they can come in to work and give it their all. So then we have to offer policies that mirror what we're trying to give to our employees, which means we have caregiver leave or something similar to it, or we have robust paid time off leave that allows them to flex in and out of life's journey as they come to us. Those two things mirrored together, I think, is a really, really, that's part of the secret sauce.
Hopefully we will continue to see more products like that for the benefit of all of us.
I think so, because the aging population will continue, and if you look at population curves, they're clearly living longer than previous generations. They either get the last phase of their life, so to speak, is either in a family's home or at a center or by themselves if they're lucky enough to be that way the whole time. And so we're going to see this development, I think, in the marketplace pretty rapidly.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jeff.
Thanks
We're out of time, but thank you again.
Thank you.